So, now the last part of the day today is focused on a series of conversations that look again at inside and outside the organization, but also how technology, how this transformation is sort of inspiring greater transformation. So I would like you to help me welcome as warmly as possible, and I really need you to welcome her as best you can, because she is someone that I admire. She's also a friend of ours at Altimeter Group. She's a friend of mine personally. Linda Boff with GE is the Executive Director, Global Director of Marketing. Please come on out, Linda. Yes, whoever that was, I love you.
I have friends out there somehow.
Well, Linda, thank you so much for joining us.
It's great to be here, Brian. Thank you.
So when we think of innovation and we look at all of the companies out there, a lot of times we hear about startups.
Yep.
We hear certainly about the Twitters and the Foursquares of the world. And then along those lines, there's a company like GE. Small little company, and I think one of the things you said in our earlier conversations that I really loved was this idea that GE is the oldest startup on the block, or something like that.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's right.
So, I guess before I even go into the first question,
Yeah.
What does that mean? How do you, when you describe that, how do you look at GE, and how do you hope that everybody looks at GE, both inside and outside?
Yeah. So, when I think about GE, hopefully when other people think about GE, invention, innovation, science, technology are at our core. It goes all the way back to our Thomas Edison roots. We're a company that's 130 years young, but invention, R&D, huge part of our culture. Every year we spend $6 billion a year on R&D. And it's who we are. So it's fabulous. I love the Googles and Twitters and Instagrams as much as everybody else does. But when I think about invention and rolling up your sleeves and being in the lab, I think about us.
Okay, that's wonderful. Well, certainly innovation's part of it, but I gotta believe there's also a sense of, well, dare I say, sort of risk mitigation, but also the opposite of that, in the sense that you're willing to take risks for the right opportunities. Do we need to switch out?
Okay. Better?
No.
No better. Better? Better.
Yes, all right.
Okay, good.
The idea then that here comes social media,
Yeah.
here comes disruptive technology and mobile technology left and right, and rather than say run away from it or throw it into some silo, you actually embrace it head on. What was it that sort of inspired you and the organization to just embrace it?
Yeah. So let me tell you about it, and then in a minute I'm going to show you about it. So when you think about innovation, when we've thought about innovation, it has to be, in my mind, more than just the talk of what you do. It actually is the platforms you embrace.
Right.
And to be an innovative company, in my mind, is to be innovative on innovative platforms. So to make the leap to social platforms for us was, I don't want to say it was the easiest decision. We all know we think about these things as we go into them, but it was the right decision because it was pairing innovative content in an innovative way on innovative channels. So I think the best way to illustrate this, I put together a short video. So if we can roll the video, I think this will give you a good idea of what I'm talking about.
Welcome to this week's Stump the Scientist. We're here with our chief scientist, Jim Bray. Our question this week comes from Brock Martin, who wonders if permanent magnets are really permanent.
In zero gravity, do the laws of centrifugal force still apply?
How is the buildup of electricity in the human body happening? And
is wireless power transmission possible?
Well done. Well done. The thing I love about all of that is that you took what it is that you do and what it is that makes you GE and really socialized it, but also in a very engaging way. I think before I can even get to my second question is there's a theme that I noticed throughout every one of those, and there's a theme that I hear in our conversations. What is it about social that really resonates with you, and how are you able to turn it so quickly in an organization like GE?
I think it's the fact that it allows us as a big brand, an older brand, given some of the other brands that we've talked about, to be our most human, to be our most accessible, to act as a person as opposed to this big brand. And I think social, when you think about it, that's what it's about. It's acting as a person, acting with great accessibility. And we know anytime we do a survey, whoever we talk to, the more they know about our company, the more they want to come work for us, the more they want to partner with us, the more they want to do business with us. So opening up the doors to the factory, so to speak, and sort of letting people in and letting them see what we think is kind of, we call it our interestingness, is the absolute best thing that we can do. And social is kind of the perfect channel to do it.
Yeah, well, I love the fact that you talk about not just humanizing the brand, but actually putting real human beings in front of it. And in those videos, there was always sort of the hero or the star, of course, is your technology or innovation, but you put the people and the fact that innovation and ideas come from people, and you put your own employees sort of front and center in the spotlight. So I want to talk a little bit about that, because we've heard a lot today about the idea of empowerment, how employees play a role in sort of the representation of the brand. But there's also a difference in the workforce today. I mean, in the next several years, millennials are going to start taking over en masse as boomers start to retire en masse. I believe we refer to this generation as sort of Generation Flux. The idea that, regardless of age as well, is that the idea of connectedness really changes sort of expectations and behavior in general. But how is sort of GE looking on the inside of not just featuring employees in its wonderful campaigns, but spotlighting them inside the company as well?
Well, Brian, you and I talked about this a little bit. It all starts inside. And for us, that can look like a CRM tool like Salesforce.com, which is now prevalent across the company. Nearly half of our 35,000 sales reps are using using Salesforce.com, which means they're using Chatter. And if you're using Chatter, it's just a short hop skip to feel comfortable with a social platform. So I think, social in a company, in our company, doesn't necessarily mean first and foremost Facebook and Twitter, although as you can see, we've embraced them. So LinkedIn has been important. Using collaboration tools has been important. But we've also, I think, done a good job of our leaders getting comfortable. Our chairman has been blogging for nearly 2 years, an internal blog, but he went on Twitter 2 weeks ago. So it's sometimes the things inside a company that can get you comfortable and you can find your voice, which I think is a hard thing to do. What's that voice that really resonates? And sometimes sharpening that voice inside gives you the wherewithal, gives you the courage to go outside.
Right. One of the things I also admire about the company is that you also look at not just bringing people together for collaboration, but you also condition or help groom today's workforce to be tomorrow's leadership. And you have a formal program, not outside of just social media in general, that actually looks at developing leaders from inside the organization.
Yeah, no, you know it very well. So GE, these sums sound so big, even to me, spends about $1 billion a year on training and development. We have thousands of people who, whether it's classroom style or virtually, are come together and study leadership, but not leadership in theory, leadership in practice. And people will go around the world. I was fortunate enough to go to Moscow and look at the healthcare system. I mean, what kind of, it's an incredible opportunity.
Right.
So we stress learning, we stress training, development, sort of this endless action learning. And I think a lot of what we're talking about sort of fuels from that. So when we bring our leaders together to talk about, innovation going forward, topics like digital social marketing are part of the landscape that we talk about in those settings.
Right.
And I think that's helpful. It's sort of I don't want to say it's a safe space, but maybe it is a little bit, sort of the safe space to learn.
Right. Well, you got to imagine that with all that you're learning with sort of the change in Generation Flux, that you're seeing sort of the same thing externally in terms of Generation Flux, that the customer is changing. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. There's a lot of studies that show that not only are employees more connected and customers are more connected, but there's sort of difference in expectations as a result. They become a little bit more discerning, they become a bit more demanding, they expect things to happen a lot sooner. So what's your sort of overall approach and philosophy to this?
So a few things. One, I want to pick up on a theme from a discussion you had earlier, which was user experience. So user experience is now part of our team at GE. We have about 5 interaction designers, user-centric designers. And to me, that's table stakes, right? Our customers don't come to GE, whether it's a mobile app or a website, and say, it's okay that it's not so great because it's a B2B site. You know, they want the same experience, the same navigation, the same ease of use that they're going to get at Amazon or Hulu or somewhere else. So I think thinking about user experience has been a sea change for us, and I can't underscore it. And because it came up earlier, I think that's an important one. Transparency. So, you know, it's a little bit uncomfortable at first, I think, for big companies. And at the same time, the idea of how open can we be with our customers, and sometimes that looks like creating a community group where our customers can talk to each other, and we sort of take a step back, right, and allow those conversations to happen. Once again, those aren't, it sounds easy now in retrospect, but when you first begin having those conversations, you think, what do you mean I'm not going to be part of that conversation?
Or how do you mean I can't control it?
Exactly, that it's just going to happen. And but when I look at something, you and I were talking backstage about LinkedIn. You know, LinkedIn for us has been this great platform where at first, you know, a lot of our employees said, okay, you know, we understand it's the right kind of professional network, but we've had this big effort to optimize profiles, ultimately to use LinkedIn for prospecting, and we're making money. It's unbelievable. So, you know, 3 of our divisions are successfully using LinkedIn to bring in revenue, which is something that I think 12 months ago, everybody would have said, that's impossible. We can't use social for that.
I'm pretty sure that conversation's still happening today.
It is absolutely still happening today. It's a work in progress.
Well, you know, I like the fact that you can tie social to business objectives across the board, right? So there's not just sales, but it's also employee engagement, employee learning, career advancement. I read an article recently about how we need to stop looking at ROI and start looking at ROA, which was, I'm going to smile, so I apologize, return on amazing. And while I think it's cool if you could create amazing experiences and find a way to measure it, at the end of the day, though, we still have a leadership organization, you know, not just in GE, but just within corporate America, or just corporations in general, that see the world a certain way. It's very black and white. If I do this, then I do this. So how did you embrace social within the organization to bring just such amazing change throughout the entire company?
I liked your ROA because there's one I've heard, by the way, ROR, return on relationship, which I also think is a really good one, although return on amazing is great. So look, hard work. You know, we have had a bazillion conversations. Our conversations around the company started with why. You know, why should this matter? Why should I care? Why is social a good idea? One of my big lessons, and maybe it'll be a lesson to people here, was for a while it was, I have to say, a bit one way. So I was talking, my team was talking, and we weren't translating. We weren't doing a good enough job of expressing why digital marketing was good for business results. So we had to kind of turn the conversation and make sure we were expressing this in terms of business strategy. So it was a small thing, but it was really quite important. So, you know, many, many conversations. We're a company that believes in putting some points on the board and learning from that. So we have done so many pilots. We've, you know, said, okay, here's a good idea. Let's create a mobile app for a customer in capital so that they can quantify the electricity within you know a McDonald's franchise. Oh, that's a good idea. Let's roll it out across capital. So, you know, we've done a lot of sort of pilot, test, learn, iterate, and then try to roll it out across, because it's not easy to do top down.
It's not. In fact, at some point, it's bottom up, and when you can realize that through these pilot programs, you can demonstrate success, you do start to get the buy-in that leads from the top down, meets both ends to the middle. I think with the last couple of minutes that we have left, we talked backstage about this idea of this Thomas Edison moment, and the fact that GE is always inventing, always reinventing. And I think that's part of what I hope everybody in this room hears, is that it's never over. You have to always compete for the future now, and that requires not just a culture, but an actual system and process within the organization. What advice do you have for people here?
Yeah, so I'd say a few things. Top of my list is you have to sort of screw up your courage, because there's not a blueprint. One of the things, it goes back to a question you asked a moment ago, Brian, which is, how did you sort of, help make this happen at GE? I was always surprised. People would say to me, okay, just give me the roadmap. And I would have to explain, there is no roadmap. We're creating the roadmap together. This isn't something with 20 years of history. So, to do that, you have to take a little bit of a leap of faith. I am personally very fortunate. I have the most enlightened CMO in the entire world in Beth Comstock, and that's been helpful because it's sort of given us a little bit of a, hey, go try things. But you have to kind of have the courage of your convictions,
right,
is number one. Number two, you actually have to be in there doing it. You can't talk about Twitter as though, and not actually be on there and be able to sort of share that experience, whether it's with executives, colleagues, et cetera. And then I think for us, it goes back to the dialogue we've been having this whole time. Our brand is about innovation. And if it's really about innovation, this is what we should be doing. So I think sometimes it's funny. You take a few lessons from your own brand, and sort of say, okay, well, if this is the bar, how do we not just reach that bar, but how do we exceed it? So that's been helpful.
And then just the last thing too that I want to bring to everybody's attention is that GE's a strong endorser of reverse mentoring, and I love the idea that not only is innovation looked at in terms of technology or just engagement strategies, but the fact that you're constantly looking at careers up and down the organization and bringing people together. Do you have a few words you want to share on that?
Oh, yeah, I do. So 3 people on my team, young millennials, have reverse mentor relationships that are global. So they travel literally around the world, to India, to Australia, to the Middle East, and have mentored people who are, 4 layers up in the organization. And it's so brilliant because it's great for them. It's great from a career development point of view. And it's also something that the person on the other end not just is benefiting from, but I think feels as though they can in turn give back. So I can't say enough about that. And I'm luckily the product of reverse mentoring myself. I mean, I just think that's the way it goes. So.
I think of myself often as being sort of reverse mentored all the time, and just always studying what everybody else is doing.
Exactly. Same here.
Well, Linda, it's always such a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank
you
you
so much for joining us. Thank you, everybody.